Hello, everyone. I am very thrilled to be here for my read aloud of I Survived the Destruction of Pompeii. And we are in chapter 5. And I want to dive right in because we left off at a pretty shocking moment where Marcus is looking at this parade of gladiators and suddenly he recognizes the man who's going to be pitted against the most fearsome gladiator in all of Pompeii. And that man was his father. So before I do that, I just want to do one little shout out to the 5th graders of Kerrville, Texas Tally Eagles. So hi to all of you, and let's dive right in. And we're at chapter 5. Here we go. Tata froze and looked up, searching the crowd frantically with his eyes. The guards screamed at him, "Move, move now!" At last Tata spotted Marcus. He dropped his shield and ran towards him. Seconds later, Marcus was in Tata's arms. "It's not possible," Tata whispered, hugging him so tightly that Marcus could barely breathe. "How did you get here?" "Festus brought me here after you were sold," Marcus said, barely able to choke out the words. "But Tata, how? Why?" Not even in Marcus's nightmares could he have imagined anything worse than this. Festus had sold Tata to the gladiators. Marcus buried his face in Tata's chest, breathing in the familiar smell. Every day, every hour, Marcus had wished for this moment, and for a few seconds he let himself believe that they were really back together, that his prayers had been answered. But of course, the opposite was true. 2 guards grabbed Tata's arms, tearing him away from Marcus, and then the Lanista appeared. "What's this?" he spat. "How dare you stop my parade?" The musicians were silent, the jugglers and acrobats still. All eyes were on Tata and Marcus. "Have mercy," Tata said, struggling in the guard's grip. "This is my son." The Lanista stared at Marcus, his cold, fishy eyes staring at him up and down. "Maybe you'd like to join your father in the arena," he sneered. Then the Lanista looked to the crowd. "What do you think?" he bellowed. "A father and son against Cyclops." A few people shouted, "Bring him! Yes! What a show it will be!" "Or maybe you should fight each other," the Lanista said, rubbing his hands together. "Run from here," Marcus's father cried. "Go!" But instead, Marcus grabbed the Lanista's arm. "I beg you, let my father go." The man ripped his arm away and snatched a spear from one of his guards. He pointed the blade at Marcus's eye. "Ever wondered how Cyclops lost his eye?" he taunted, lunging at Marcus. "No!" Tata shouted. Marcus staggered back. He lost his balance and fell, smacking his head on the stone curb. His head exploded in pain. He struggled to sit up, and through the blur he could see Tata being dragged away, the guards jabbing him with spears. The Lanista's wicked cackle rose up over the merry music. As Tata disappeared, all the strength drained from Marcus's body. These last 2 months, he'd always had the hope that he and Tata would be together again. And that speck of hope, a tiny glowing ember, had been everything to him. But now, Marcus lay back in the gutter, closing his eyes. How could he go on? In his mind, he pictured Festus's face, heard his barking orders. He imagined the slaves who'd been working in the villa for years. Their bodies were crooked and scarred, their eyes dead like statues. And then Marcus thought of the heroes from his favorite stories. They had desperate moments. Like Odysseus, who was lost at sea for 10 years on his way home from Troy. Like Hercules, pinned down by a bloodthirsty lion. Those courageous men knew terror and hopelessness, as Marcus did now. But their stories hadn't ended with fear and defeat. Marcus's eyes snapped open. He sat up and struggled to his feet. He understood. He would try to save Tata, even if it killed him. So that's the end of chapter 5, and now we're on chapter 6. Marcus went to the fountain and splashed cool water on his face. He didn't have much time. Soon the parade would reach the gladiator barracks and Tata would be locked away. The barracks was like a prison with high stone walls and a towering iron gate. Marcus had heard that the fighters were locked in dark cells, their arms and legs shackled until it was time to fight. Once Tata was in the barracks, it would be too late. Somehow Marcus had to steal Tata away from the parade. But how? He searched his mind for ideas. Again, he thought of Odysseus. Odysseus wasn't the strongest man, but he was cunning. There had come a low point in the Trojan War when the Greek armies had Troy surrounded, but they could not break through the massive wall that encircled the city. Thousands of Trojan archers guarded the wall, ready to fire down on anyone who came close. Some Greek generals were ready to give up on invading the city of Troy, but not Odysseus. He came up with the ingenious idea of building a wooden horse with a hollow belly. He and his best Greek soldiers hid inside the horse. They made the Trojans believe the wooden animal was an offering from the gods and tricked them into bringing it inside their walls. And then, attack! In the dead of night, Odysseus and the hidden soldiers snuck out of the horse and opened the gates. The Greek soldiers smashed the Trojan army and conquered the city. Marcus searched around. All he saw was the laundry bag lying where he dropped it. But wait. The idea flashed into Marcus's mind, and before he could talk himself out of it, he had ripped the sack open and was rummaging through Festus's clothes. He grabbed a toga, a robe woven from the finest wool and edged in purple ribbon. Marcus couldn't build himself a wooden horse, but he could ride and hide in Festus's toga, disguise himself as an important Roman citizen. Marcus threw it around himself, covering his old tunic. The toga stank of rotten food, old wine, and Festus's sweat. Marcus fought back his nausea as he wrapped the endless stretch of fabric around his body, finally draping the loose end over his shoulder. He straightened his shoulders. The toga dragged on the ground a bit, but it would have to do. Marcus spat into his hands and flattened his hair to his forehead, the style of a rich son of Rome. Now he just needed a weapon, something to scare the guards so he and Tata could escape. Once again, the answer was right in front of him on the sidewalk: the snake charmer. Somehow the old man was dozing with the basket at his feet. Marcus crept up, kneeled, and snatched the basket. The old man was awake in a flash, hollering after him, "Stop him! Stop that thief!" Marcus darted through the crowd, one hand firmly on the lid of the basket. He was terrified that the lid would fly off, that the cobra would spring out and sink its fangs into Marcus's neck. He could feel the snake hissing ferociously, banging its body against the sides of the flimsy basket. Marcus's heart pounded, his legs wobbled, his mind swirled with fear, but somehow he kept himself moving until he caught up with the parade. The music had stopped and the Lanista was unlocking the gates of the gladiator barracks. Marcus was almost out of time, and he would have just one chance. So that is the end. I'm leaving you on a little bit of a cliffhanger. Do you know what a cliffhanger is? I think you do. And I'll be back tomorrow. But don't go away yet, because I still have an important quest that I'm going to send you on. And now for today's daily quest. In many of my I Survive books, my characters have different ways of helping themselves feel stronger when they feel scared or nervous, or when something is happening that they don't understand. So when that happens, they might think back on a story that they'd read, or some advice that someone in their family gave them, some wisdom from a grandfather or from an older brother. In this story, Marcus, he often thinks about the stories that he read when he was spending time in the library with his father. And his favorite stories were from ancient Greece, and they were written about 800 years before the time that I'm writing about in my book. Some of his favorite stories were about a warrior named Odysseus from ancient Greece. And thinking about what Odysseus did, all the creative and his bravery and his creativity, it inspires Marcus in different ways. And you're going to see that as the book goes on, how Odysseus and other characters that he read about inspire Marcus. So for today's quest, I want you to do something a little different than what I've asked you to do before. I want you to think about a character in a book or a story that you've read that's inspired you, that you've remembered. I want you to think about a character who's maybe given you some ideas or some new ways of thinking about your life, or helped you in a situation where you felt nervous or stressed or confused about something. And then once you've thought about that, I want you to write a letter to that character. It doesn't have to be a long letter, but just write a letter explaining to that character what you learned from them. Pretend they're a real person and tell them the ways that that character has inspired you. And then use some examples from the story that you read to help that character understand the ways that he or she has inspired you. I just think it's really interesting to think about these things. I do that a lot of times when I'm reading. I love to connect what I'm reading to my life. And I think that you probably do that too. So that is your quest for today, and I hope you enjoy it. And I can't wait to see you at our next read aloud together.